And welcome back. I'm Joe Concha, along with my co-host and beer pong partner, Rick Unger. We're now joined by also Ken Chandler and Jane Velez Mitchell. Democrats now revolting against a bill that would allow Congress to be a part of a pending deal with Iran over its nuclear program, siding with the president that the bill would derail the proceedings. If passed, the Corker-Menendez bill would suspend Mr. Obama's authority to temporarily lift sanctions for 65 days, pending a congressional vote to approve or disapprove said final deal. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi saying in a statement, and we got quotes, "Diplomacy has taken us to a framework agreement founded on vigilance and enforcement, and these negotiations must be allowed to proceed unencumbered." Meanwhile, Senator Corker telling Fox News there should be no problem getting Congress involved in a potential deal with Iran. We have no audio in here.
Have any effect on this deal. As a matter of fact, what we know is just quite the contrary. We know that during the negotiations, the fact that Congress was likely to weigh in was something that the administration, the other Western countries were able to use to ensure that this deal isn't worse than it is.
And let's hear a little bit more from Mr. Corker.
If the president feels like this is something that's good for the nation, surely he can sell this to the United States Senate and the House.
Okay, so let's bring in Newsmax White House correspondent and Newsmax chief political columnist John Gizzi. John, Senator Corker is considered a centrist. Do you think that he'll be able to work with the president on this and Senate Democrats?
Yes, I do, but there's also the fact that events are moving at an almost quicksilver speed, Joe. He's going to have a committee hearing on Tuesday. It's an open amendment process. That means that any measures can be put on the Corker amendment. Senator Coons of Delaware, Senator Murphy of Connecticut, both have amendments that would water down the legislation or strip out key parts. For example, the idea that the president has to certify to Congress that Iran is directly involved in terrorist actions. Senator Coons wants to take that out completely. Now, all of this is a trust Tehran initiative. That's what I call it, and that's what a lot of others say. I would have some questions whether this could pass the full committee, and then there will be an up and down vote in the Senate on Tuesday afternoon. So my money is on the Corker Amendment as it is being enacted without amendments.
John, it's Rick Unger. Enacted by how many votes? Because I think we get to the next question. I think you're right, by the way. I think it will pass. But then we get to the question of what happens if the president decides to veto it. Can Senator Schumer, who is joining with Corker on this, will he bring enough Democrats to override a veto?
As of today, and mind you, Rick, this is difficult because Congress is out of session, but as of today...
What a surprise.
It seems as though support for the Corker Amendment is growing. Senator Menendez, of course, was an early backer.
Right.
And the phrase that I keep hearing is perilously close to a veto-proof majority.
Yeah, interesting.
John, when this gets to January 30th or so, when the final agreement is supposed to come into place, do you think that we actually will have a signed agreement between Iran and the United States on their nuclear program? And will economic sanctions be lifted day one as the Ayatollah is demanding?
First of all, the Ayatollah on his website says exactly the opposite of what Press Secretary Josh Earnest tells us on an almost daily basis at the White House, that the sanctions would be lifted gradually with the president weighing them and putting a waiver on the sanctions as Congress empowered him when they originally passed the measure. Now, this raises another issue that many of the Iranian exiles opposed to the Tehran regime point out, and that is that the Ayatollah has to sign off on any agreement that emerges from these talks, that President Rouhani is simply a spokesman for the government. It's the Ayatollah Khamenei who has the last words. And if you look at his website today, he's a little more skeptical about it. The whole idea that all sanctions would be lifted on the day that an agreement comes down, if it does, is just out of the question, according to the president's own top spokesman.
Well, the Ayatollah seems like a pretty reasonable guy, so I can't see what could possibly go wrong here. We're going bowling next week, as a matter of fact, so that should be fun. John Gizzi from Washington, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Look forward to coming back.
Take care,
Absolutely.
Giz.
So, levity aside, that's kind of a sticking point, Rick Unger. Hey, we want them lifted day one. No, we need to be able to verify first. That's a wide gap.
Aside from the absolute comedic bliss I get out of the concept of the Ayatollah sitting there tweeting, which is what this did. It came out on Twitter. Look, politics is a worldwide sport, folks. This guy is a politician in his country like our politicians are in ours. Yesterday there was a story saying that the hardliners over in Iran are buying into the agreement, right? Now you got the Ayatollah going the other way. They're playing the same games that we're playing here with Congress. I don't know where it all ends up, but it's all politics.
Right, but I mean, I'm more interested actually in the dilemma that Senator Chuck Schumer finds himself in, because he is likely the next Senate leader. And, you know, obviously he doesn't want to upset the White House, but he has a very strong pro-Israel constituency that he has to take care of here in New York. So, I mean, this is a real dilemma for him. I mean, this is going to be a test of his skills, I think.
But he's picked his side.
He has picked
And
his
actually,
side.
to his credit, he
But-
has not hedged. He picked his side.
Well, he hasn't hedged yet.
Yet. That's true.
Right, boy, I hope
That's
he has a
true.
good chiropractor.
You know, I was just in Israel, and I could certainly understand the terror of the thought of Iran getting nuclear weapons, and it's certainly something a lot of people were talking about there. But by the same token, I've known Iranians who've escaped and been exiled from Iran, and I know that they've told me that there are sizable populations within Iran who want to return to the world community. So obviously, the most important thing is making sure they don't get the weapon. But if we can do that and somehow allow this country to re-enter the world community, that would be a good thing for trade. It would also be a good thing for the good people, not the demonic leaders, and I believe that they are demonic, but the good people of Iran who really have suffered unimaginably under this really freakish, bizarre rule.
Yeah, it's been totalitarian almost. We almost forget, obviously, all those protests in Tehran and all those people that were killed there because they tried to have a democratic uprising and it got squashed in a hurry. To Jane's point, that's still very much that
no
government.
question that's the case. One thing to keep an eye out, though, there is some scuttlebutt here and there that if the Ayatollah, I am told, might be very ill. He might be suffering from liver
Let's
cancer.
hope.
Well, if that should come to be the case and he passes away, there are those who believe that the army will rise up in a coup and things will change.
Wow, Jane getting revenge. The Ayatollah was saying death to America. Now Jane's saying death to the Ayatollah. And we'll see you on YouTube. So, coming up next, does the leader of the free world have an anti-Christian bias? We'll discuss that after the break. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax.